¿Cómo se dice mariposa en inglés? You say lift or elevator. ¿Seguro? Of course, you see. Both go floor to floor. Para fiestas y posadas. If you're watching this video, hopefully you have watched the other videos regarding stress. And I've decided to use my book, which is available on Amazon. The title is La lengua y sus secretos. But here has some explanations. It goes into a little more detail. I'm just going to do a brief overview. But in Spanish, there's something that are called diphthongs, triphthongs, and hiatus. Now, if you study linguistics, you're already familiar with those terms. If you are not, well, a hiatus, hiato, this is a break or a separation. So it's when two sounds separate. This is all going to be related to the high vowels. I, U. So the I and the U in spelling. Now, a diphthong is a union of two vowels where you have at least one high vowel next to another high vowel, or any other vowel. It's not going to matter. Just one of them has to be a high vowel. And a triphthong, you will have two high vowels separated by a mid or a low vowel. And I will explain that as we go along. So to look at high vowels, we're going to focus on diphthongs first, the union of two sounds. Here we have spellings with an I, but the I is not going to have its natural sound I. It's going to sound ya. So if we look at this is going to be hacia, it's a ya. Hierba, it's a ye. Biólogo, bio, yo. And that's what creates a diphthong. And we have many diphthongs in English too. For example, well, when you say my name, instead of saying Marco, you would say Marco. That O, that's a diphthong. There's many others. But moving on, we also have these. So the position doesn't matter. It can be in front or it can be behind the non-high vowel, and it will be a diphthong. So all of these sound ya. So bailo, so it's a I. Peine, boina, you get that ya. Now that ya, so that glide, that's called a glide. If it's at the end of a word, in Spanish we will not spell it with an I, we will spell it with a Y. So here, this is a perfect example where we have a U, right, which is a high vowel, but then we have a Y, which represents that I, for example. Whenever you have the two high vowels together, it will always form a diphthong, regardless of stress or stress marks. The difference is if it's spelt with a Y, the U is going to have its natural sound, U. So this is going to be muy. It sounds U. But if the Y were to be spelt as an I, then the I has its natural sound, and the U will be the glide. So here we will look at the U's where the U is a glide. So we have ua, cualidad, hue, hueso, fui, we. So fui. Au, aura, eu, eufemismo, iu, ciudad, right? So this is a wa. And this is really, this would be the basics for diphthongs. Now, something to keep in mind, Spanish does have several words that have an archaic H, and this H is still used for tradition, right? Such as cohibido. Now here you might think, wait, that's an H, that's a consonant. Shouldn't this break it up? And you might hear somebody say cohibido. The stress is over here. The part in question is this. And you might hear some individuals say cohibido. That's fine. But most people are going to say cohibido. We're just going to ignore the H for the most part because H's are silent. They really have no phonetic Their purpose in Spanish is historic. That's it. There's no phonetic reason for H's. So if we look at some of these examples, we have ahumar, right? This au will sound ow. I don't know many people, and by many people, I don't know a single person that pronounces this word ahumar. I've never heard it, but if you have fun in the comments. Let me know. The stress would be at the end, so ahumar. Right here, it's going to become a diphthong as well. Cohibir, prohibir. I've never heard anybody say prohibir or prohibir. Some people might enunciate, though, so actually I'll take that back. Maybe I have heard some people enunciate prohibir. But usually it's going to be a diphthong. So the top ones are going to be diphthongs as opposed to the bottom ones, which will be divided up. So ahorrar, but you might hear ahorrar. But prohíbo, notice this one splits. That's why it has a stress mark. And if we were to follow the stress rules, so assuming you've already watched the video on stress rule number 1, notice that this would be syllable 1, and this would be syllable 2, and it ends in a vowel, N or S, in this case a vowel. Syllable 2 we generally don't mark, but here we're still marking it, and the reason why is to make sure that the reader knows this is a hiatus, because usually we will read it as a diphthong. So turbo hélice. Now here, really, these will always be separate, so there's really no need to focus on those. It would really be these whenever you have a high vowel. So keep that in mind. Now, if we continue on, something that's very interesting is whenever we have an O and an A, so for example, this, even though grammatically we might divide it up as an O, A, Ha, Ka, the interesting thing is that the O is actually, it sounds like a glide. It's going to sound as a wa. So nobody says Oaxaca, it's Oaxaca. Think about it as a W. And that's something to keep in mind. So whenever there's an O and an A, that's generally what you're going to have. So it's interesting. The O takes the place of a U, we could say, in Spanish. Now, that's it for diphthongs. Now we're going to focus on a hiatus. So a hiatus is a gap or a separation. And what we do is the following. So to let the reader know if there's a diphthong or a hiatus, whenever there's a high vowel next to a non-high vowel, for example here, if it is a diphthong, the high vowel will never have a stress. The other vowel will. So let's look at these right now. And notice this is hacia, so the stress is here. And this would be, say, like toward or direction. Se fue hacia allá. He went that way. Versus this one, where it does have the stress over the high vowel, this will be a hiatus. So you're going to break them up because the I will sound like a natural E. So hacia, and this is how you divide up the vowels. Hacia, 2 syllables. Hacia, 3. And the same happens over here. So notice, actuó, right? So this is a wo. And the stress is at the end, so we mark it over the O. Versus over here, we have actuó. There's a hiatus, so we're going to mark the U. And this is very important. Over here, there's no stress because it follows the stress rule, that rule number 1. Hopefully you've watched the video, where it's syllable 1, syllable 2, stress is in syllable 2, and it ends in a vowel. We don't put a mark. Versus over here, we have syllable 1 and 2. It ends in a vowel. The stress is in syllable 1. We have to mark it. And the question can be, is it over the U or is it over the O? Well, because it's a diphthong, we put it over the O. If it were a hiatus, we would put it over the U, because that would signal to the reader U is going to have its natural sound. Now, in the case of triphthongs, triphthongs are very similar to diphthongs, except for there's 3. So this is what I meant by there's 2 high vowels split by a non-high vowel. So this will all of this will be a syllable. So we look at syllables now and we see 1, 2, 3. This syllable is going to need a stress. The stress is going to go over the E because this is the non-high vowel that will maintain the triphthong. So this is going to sound like a y, and this is going to sound like a w. So this would be a lieu tica. Right? If we look at, for example, this over here, so the verb to copy, we also have a triphthong. That's why the stress is on the E. But here the stress is in the final syllable. So again, it ends in an S, syllable 1. We need to put a stress mark where the non-high vowel to maintain the triphthong. So copiéis. No copiéis. Don't copy. Right? And these are really the basic rules. Even if you look at this one right over here, notice this is a triphthong. We leave it alone. Stress is over here, and we mark this one. And this is based on stress number 1, or rule number 1. So hopefully you get a chance and you can watch those videos. Now, if we get a triphthong at the end of the word, and that part of the word ends with a y sound, we will never spell it with an I. It will always be with a Y. That's the reason why Uruguay is spelled with a Y. Paraguay is spelled with a Y. And because it's spelled with a Y, it now ends in a consonant, spelling-wise. Stress is in syllable 1, which is the last syllable. We do not put a stress mark over it. And that's it. So, this being said, thank you very much for watching. Please watch rule number 1 and rule number 2, and I'll catch you in the next one.